English colonization. The Mayflower brought religious freedom seekers to the New World. During the first winter at Plymouth, about half of the crew perished. 15. The eastern seaboard was settled primarily by English colonists in the 17th century, along with much smaller numbers of Dutch and Swedes. Colonial America was characterized by a severe labor shortage that required reliance on involuntary forms of labor, such as slavery and indentured servitude, and by a policy of benevolent English neglect that allowed the development of an American spirit, distinct from that of the European mother country. 16. Over half of all European immigrants to colonial America were indentured servitude. The first successful English colony was established in 1607 on the James River at Jamestown, the beginning of the American frontier. It declined for decades until a new wave of settlers arrived in the late 17th century and established a commercial agriculture based on tobacco. Between the late 1610s and the American Revolution, the English brought some 50,000 prisoners to the American colonies. 18. A particularly bad example was the Powhatan Rebellion of 1622 in Virginia, in which Native Americans killed hundreds of English settlers. The largest conflict between Native Americans and English settlers in the 17th century was King Philip's War in New England. 19. The Yamasee War in South Carolina was bloody, the massacre of settlers at Jamestown in 1622. Soon, Southern colonists feared all Native Americans as enemies. The Puritans were the primary early settlers of New England, founding the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1630, although there had been a small earlier settlement in 1620 by a similar group, the Pilgrims, at Plymouth Colony. The Middle Colonies, which included the present-day states of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, were characterized by a great deal of religious diversity. The first English settlement to be established south of Virginia was the province of Carolina, with the Georgia Colony, the last of the 13 colonies, established in 1733. 21. The colonies were characterized by religious diversity, with many Congregationalists in New England, German and Dutch Reformed in the Middle Colonies, Catholics in Maryland, and Scots-Irish Presbyterians on the frontier. Many royal officials and merchants were Anglican. 22. Religious belief grew rapidly after the First Great Awakening, a revival movement in the 1740s led by preachers such as Jonathan Edwards. Influenced by the Great Awakening, American evangelicals added a new emphasis on the spiritual outpouring of the Holy Spirit and conversions that instilled in new believers a strong love for God. The revivalists incorporated these elements and passed on the newly formed evangelical sect, laying the groundwork for the Second Great Awakening that began in the late 1790s. 23. Each of the 13 American colonies had a slightly different government structure. Typically, a colony was ruled by a governor, appointed by London, who was responsible for the executive branch and relied on a locally elected parliament to vote on taxes and make laws. In the 18th century, the American colonies grew rapidly because of their abundance of land and food and low death rates. The colonies were wealthier than most parts of Britain. This attracted a steady stream of immigrants, especially young men, who came to America as indentured servants. Tobacco and rice plantations imported black slaves from the British West Indies. By the 1770s, they made up 1/5 of the American population. The question of independence from Britain did not arise as long as the colonies needed British troops to defend against the French and Spanish powers. These threats disappeared by 1765. London viewed the American colonies as only for the benefit of the mother country, a policy known as mercantilism.